what the real problem is round here? It's not the heretics. It's that every single one of you high and mighty mouth breathers is so drunk on your own stink that you've lost sight of what's important. I think it's time to really shake things up. Really get the party started. Oh, this is gonna be fun! Time to do what the last fodder can't, yeah? Come on, Killjoys! Work to do! Yeah! Eat it! Eat some of this! You hungry waters? I've got just a thing! You won't feel a thing! Promise! Presents for everyone! I'm a giver! You don't look like takers! Here comes the best bit! Let me see those flames! Bits and pieces everywhere! Let's open you all up, shall we?
There's the abomination spirit! Go! We seem to be a viability short. Yes!
Alrighty, welcome to another video. Today I've got a Havoc 40 mundane combat scum build for you. Now if you're familiar with Dark Souls, you'll know exactly what I mean by mundane, but this build has no tox, no bleed, no burn, no fancy shenanigans, just raw physical power. This is one of my favourite builds at the moment. It's extremely easy to play and it has so much damage, while being surprisingly tanky. Or I should say elusive, hard to kill, because it's not necessarily tanky like an Arbitrator or Ogren, but the Scum is hard to kill. Now let me show you what the build is capable of and you'll have a better understanding of why I like it, and then I'll take you into the weapons, Curios and talents. So as long as you got your head taker active, you'll notice that you one tap every single trash enemy as long as you're hitting the headshot. This is important for the brutal momentum perk, and once you start ramping with your ultimate and stuff, you'll just start mulching through all your horde enemies like they're nothing. Into all your carapace enemies, you'll use your heavies. If they're not carapace, just use your lights, and 1 or 2 hits they're gonna go down. It is just that easy. Just keep swinging, 1 or 2 taps they're gonna go down. Into your carapace enemies, like I said, use your heavies. It's going to be a 4-shot breakpoint. Unless you crit, it'll be a 3-shot breakpoint. So I didn't have all my head taker stacks there, that's why I was a 4-shot with a crit, but as you can see, it does a lot of damage. Now going on to the star of the show, the Rashad Combat Axe. I dump mobility and I take carapace and elite damage as my perks. As you saw, I don't need flak or unarmored for any specific breakpoint. Once I have rampage and my stim, I will most definitely be 1 or 2 shotting anything that's not carapace, including bulwarks and reapers. Now let me show you something quickly. With Rampage, you'll notice a little bit of HP. With Maulers, you'll notice a little bit of HP. That is why we're taking Carapace and Elite damage. The Rashad Combat Axe already shreds anything not Carapace when you have your Rampage active. So by taking Carapace and Elite damage, we can round off these breakpoints, pretty much increasing our time to kill by double into Plasma Gunners because it goes from a 2 to a 1-shot breakpoint, and by 33% into Maulers because it goes from a 3-shot into a 2-shot breakpoint. So Carapace and Elite damage is very important. I have messed around with Flak and Maniac, but I find that you just get the most return with Carapace and Elite damage. Onto the blessings, I take Brutal Momentum and Head Taker. Brutal Momentum's pretty simple, there's a lot of cleave in this build, and Brutal Momentum acts as a separate type of cleave, where basically you carry your first attack's cleave ratio or rating, whatever you want to call it, for the next 3 to 4 attacks, and then it takes into consideration your cleave. So having both is how you maximize it. Again, we're not relying on any fancy elements or tox or blah blah blah, so we do want that extra cleave to help deal with our Horde TTK. Then I combine it with Head Taker, which is strength on hit for 3.5 seconds. Very easy to keep maximum uptime. I don't need to kill stuff, just hit stuff. Now I prefer this over Decimator because one miss on Decimator means you lose all your stacks, and when I compared it in the uptimes mod, I was just getting far more value through Head Taker. Now onto the secondary weapons. This is where it gets a little interesting. What I typically run is the Shredder Auto Pistol, I dump Mobility, and I take Flak and Maniac as the perks. I then take Blaze Away and Inspiring Barrage. This is just a great rat weapon. When something goes bad and you can't really hit stuff, you need to dodge behind cover, just shoot into thin air, get all your toughness back, and go back out there swinging. It also has a nice amount of stagger for things like rages, and more specifically trappers. A couple of shots will stop them from doing their trap. It's extremely quick, just a great sidearm for a melee build. But for the most part, you're going to be spending like 90% of your time in melee. You're only really going to be switching to your Shredder Auto Pistol when you want that extra mobility, when you want to stagger a trapper, a sniper, a flamer, something along those lines. And something that you'll notice, I want you to look at the dodge distance of my Combat Axe, and you'll kind of see why the mobility of the Shredder Auto Pistol is kind of crazy. Alright, that looks pretty normal. Now when I do it with the Shredder Auto Pistol, look how long that slide animation is. You can use that to just absolutely abuse gunners, get into distance. It's just crazy good mobility. It's crazy. Because remember, your hitbox is adjusting all the time as you're like turning around, so you can actually like dodge stuff. Like the amount of skill expression this gun has is crazy. Do not underestimate it. It's very much slept on because it doesn't, you know, like kill stuff as fast as the infantry auto gun, but the amount of defensive utility of this gun, chef's kiss. I have a half chub just thinking about it. Now onto the Curios, I take 2 toughness blessings and 1 stamina blessing. If you want to take extra stamina blessings for the extra attack speed later on in the talent tree, that's fine, but you are giving up survivability. I'm going to recommend 2 toughness because I think that's a more consistent baseline for me to recommend, and it is what I personally run in most of my games anyway. For the perks, I go quite selfish: 3 combat ability regen, 3 stamina regeneration, and 3 toughness perks. If you want to replace any of these for damage resistance to gunners or allow revive speed, those are great options as well. Now let's go into the talent tree. Quick and Deadly, 15% close range damage for 3 seconds after a successful dodge. Bear in mind, this is close range damage, not close ranged damage, okay? This works for melee as well. It also affects your tox, your damage over time, your explosions, all that good stuff. This is a base damage increase, not a ranged damage increase. Then we're going to Precision Violence, Toughness Regen Sustain, nice and simple. A Tertium Welcome, 15% melee damage on first enemy hit with each attack. This is important for the Brutal Momentum damage carryover, especially with your cleave, and the most important breakpoint for this was actually the Mobian, just your trash Mobian mob. We're then going to Burst of Energy. When your toughness breaks, get 50% toughness back and stun immunity for 6 seconds. 10-second cooldown, a great defensive layer, don't leave home without it. We're then going to Float Like a Butterfly, 20% crit chance after a perfect block or successful dodge, nice and simple. 25 toughness boost, don't leave home without it, especially in a Havoc 40 environment. Now for the blitzers, you have an option between Blackout or the Boombringer, even if we're not combining it with Pocket Toxin. We don't take the Chem Grenade because this is a mundane build, none of that heresy stuff. But the primary reason for the blackout is for its stagger. You can stagger Reapers, Gunners, Trappers, even groups of Carapace like Crushers and Maulers. And because you kill stuff so quickly in 1 or 2 shots with a combat axe and multiple at a time, you're getting a lot of your blackout grenades back. Just a great piece of utility. I prefer this over the Boombringer. However, if you don't have your Rampage or your Stim active, your armor TTKs can be a little lower relative to something like a Shiv. This is where Boombringer will get a little bit of value, but if you're just kiting it out until you get your Rampage ability, I find that you'll just get a lot more utility, round out your build better with blackout, but both are good options, take what you like. I then opt for Tis But a Scratch. Toughness regeneration when taking range damage for 3 seconds. Losing all your toughness cancels this effect, but when we lose all of our toughness, we get Burst of Energy. Great synergy. We then go into Nimble, extra dodge speed, and extra dodge linger, so the iframes that you get after a dodge last a little bit longer. We then combine it with Jittery, so we can just spam dodge more often, and abuse dodge linger iframes. Then we go into Sample Collector. Even though we don't have any tox, so we're not getting the 2% on enemies killed, it's still very important for getting maximum uptime on your stims. Then we go into Ruffian. This is important for breakpoints. It's not super important, so like if you don't have a veteran and you want to go gunslinger, that's perfectly fine. If you change this builder and make modifications to incorporate some tox, you'll typically want extra crit, so anarchist can be good, but I typically rate long lasting over blessed stims anyway. So ultimately I think Ruffian is just the most consistent. If you don't have a veteran, then a gunslinger has some more value, but just stick with Ruffian. Then we go into long lasting, into Rampage, into channeled aggression. As you saw without Rampage, our Carapace breakpoints can be a little slow relative to some better options for that specifically, but I mean a Shiv doesn't come anywhere close to killing anything else relative to the combat axe. Anywho's, point being, channeled aggression, 25% rending on heavy attack. We use the heavy attack into the Carapace. That's exactly when we want rending. Happy days. Pulverizing strikes, 50% cleave while Rampage is active. Additionally, gain 2.5% melee power for every second spent with the ability active, stacks up to 10 times for 25% melee power. Again, melee power, not damage, so this improves our cleave as well. Then we take Boiling Blood just to extend the duration of Rampage and be popping off more often. We then go into the 10% melee damage boost, then we go into Hive Seated Brawler for damage reduction and melee damage depending on our available stamina. This will typically translate to damage reduction. However, if you get yourself in a bad situation and you can't use your sidearm to get you out of it, just go all in with Hive Seated Brawler and the melee damage. Punching above one's weight, 15% damage against elites and monstrosities. Nice and simple, really good, happy days, always active. Into Hyper Violence, especially in the horde situations. This is what allows you to just kill like 10 mobs at a time, even in a Havoc 40 environment where every single unit has more mass, so you just have less cleave in general. It'll make you feel like you're playing an Ulrich again. You'll know exactly what I mean if you're a Havoc player. We then combine all those things with Battering Strikes for up to 50% melee cleave, and Battering Momentum. The Rashad Combat Axe with Brutal Momentum is a weapon and blessing combo that can actually make really good use of Battering Momentum. So basically every hit's going to be having more than 150, easily more than 150% more cleave, with Pulverizing Strikes, with Battering Strikes, with Battering Momentum, with Brutal Momentum, with Head Take-Up, and the stims, all that good stuff. I then go into Adrenaline Frenzy. Because we're killing so much stuff, this is pretty much always active for a more or less permanent 10% melee attack speed and 25% melee damage. Pretty good. The source is Adrenaline Smiter. This is actually how you keep up the uptime. Killing like 2 elites will fully stack your Adrenaline Smiter. So just look at this. 16 into Adrenaline Frenzy, and then it lasts for 10 seconds. That is a ridiculously good uptime. And just for another defensive layer, because Adrenaline Frenzy is active so often, Adrenaline Unbound pretty much acts as catch of breath from the veteran, where the restriction is just keeping Adrenaline Frenzy active. It doesn't turn off if you get hit. Again, kind of leaning into that all-in playstyle. We then go into the Critical Chance boost and Swift Endurance for attack speed, into the Sweet Spot, and Channeled Devastation. Now, as you can see, I have 15% crit chance in the Psychanium. When you go into an actual game, you're in the front line, you're killing all the back line, everything's targeting you, but you're dodging around with Jittery and Nimble. You're going to have your Float Like a Butterfly active quite a bit. This will take you to the 35% crit threshold, and that's when you'll max out your Channel Devastation. And last but not least, we've got the Stim Lab. We go up to Wildfire 3, and then we take Fury 2 for 20% strength and 15% rending. Then whether you want to go Regain or Fervor is up to you. I prefer Fervor for more damage, just kill stuff faster, especially with a class like the Scum, the extra dodge distance, more dodge recovery speed with Jittery and Nimble, but you'll probably have to be a higher APM player to get the most out of Fervor, whereas with Regain, you just get a bunch of toughness replenishment, a bunch of toughness damage reduction, and it's just a passive increase to your total strength. Not damage strength, just your build strength. But anywho's, I hope you learned a thing or two, I hope you enjoy the build, don't forget to help a brother out in the algorithm, catch you in the next video, God bless, 07.